Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hello, everyone.
How's it going?
It's going good.
Well, it's been a good week so far.
It's been pretty.
Oh, yeah.
That other
I'm gonna tell
storm's
you
sucking all the moisture out of the air.
It's all October generally is just a great month for weather for our area. It just seems to work that way.
It ebbs and flows.
But there's a massive storm there in the Gulf right now that is, I was making a comment earlier that, God, just from the satellite, it's an absolutely beautiful work of nature to see this thing so symmetrical, so compact, so tight. It kind of reminded me a little bit of what Hurricane Camille looked like.
Really?
Yeah, it had, Camille was a very small, compact storm. And matter of fact, I still think Camille was listed as the strongest winds ever recorded making landfall.
Wow.
Because I do believe the winds of Camille reached 200 sustained when it hit land, which is very rare.
Yeah.
Storms that get that wound up generally weaken because it goes through cycles of strengthening and then weakening, and then there's eye wall reforms, and it takes time to kind of get its act together. But right now, it's I think it's right there around the Yucatan Peninsula. Matter of fact, it's in the same area where they claim the giant asteroid struck back 66 million years ago.
Really?
That killed all the dinosaurs,
Wow.
supposedly. It's in that area right now, right there near Progresso. I think I saw a map of it kind of out in that area of the Gulf. So it's, it's a tragedy. It looks like it's going to go into Tampa, Florida. At least that's what the projections are showing. But, gee, man, those people cannot catch a break right now.
No.
So it's we have to keep those in our thoughts and prayers as they try to deal with this, and it's going to be a lot of damage to property, and it's going to probably be some lives lost, and some people are going to stay, and they're going to drown, or whatever the case may be. So, yep.
Same thing happens around here. Whenever there's a big storm coming through, there's,
Yeah, and then they got the issue. Then you're going to have the insurance market now. It's just going to be... I don't know how this is going to work out.
I haven't really been keeping up, and I heard there's a lot of back and forth between the hurricane that happened last week, or it was a couple weeks ago. I can't remember, that went like straight through like Georgia and all that, and messed up South Carolina or
North Carolina.
Almost destroyed North Carolina.
I know,
the western part of the state.
And Tennessee and all that stuff.
Eastern Tennessee. I mean, those areas, I've been in those areas. I've driven those areas. Yeah. And I'm like, I remember that. And it's just not there anymore. I mean, which is just unbelievable, the amount of destruction and just...
Which is crazy for them because they usually don't get...
Well, nobody's living up in the mountains thinks that, a hurricane's going to bother me. I mean, who thinks that way? I mean, but it's...
That's usually an our problem.
It's usually a coastal problem, or the states that are bordering the the body of water. Is where the biggest destruction. But just like I mentioned, Camille. When Camille hit in '69, it flooded like 7 or 8 states.
Cool.
So they produced massive amounts of moisture, and just the amount of rain falling, and it's just people living up in these mountains like that. You get enough rain, and all of a sudden that ground starts getting loose.
Oh, yeah.
And water's got to go downhill. And it's usually moving pretty fast. Those beautiful streams that we all love to sit by. And, it's kind of picturesque, and it's got to make that bubbling sound as it goes down. It can turn into raging torrents with that kind of rain. I think that some areas of rain I saw was like almost 30 inches.
Wow.
That's a lot of water falling from the sky, so they've got, they're scared. They don't know how many bodies they're going to find that have been lost, or they're going to find later bodies in trees, buried in the mud.
Crazy.
Just terrible situation right now.
Right.
Matter of fact, our friend that we had on the show,
Yeah.
Todd Terrell with the United Cajun Navy, I just saw a post by him. He said they're in 6 states
Wow.
dealing with just
Yeah.
rescue operations and relief and trying to help all that. So it's a bad situation. Now you're going to have this situation hit.
Yeah.
And FEMA's
Compound.
saying they ran out of money. I mean, some of these stories I heard about, they don't have money to give these people, because they've used portion of this money to give to migrants for resettlement and stuff
Right.
like that. If that comes out, if that's true, and I don't know how anybody can tolerate that. I really, I don't. I mean,
Right.
But
And the thing that kind of worries me is if you thought the last one was bad, this one's going to be even worse.
Yeah, I mean, they're. I saw the latest projections. 12 feet in Tampa.
Yeah.
Storm surge. That's a lot of water.
Yeah. And you told me there's a lot of wind in that one as well.
Yeah.
Which is like that's the part that's hard to.
Well, I mean,
that's the part that like unless you have seen it personally, like hurricane winds like just push a tree over. Like there's nothing quite like that. That it's really kind of like, for me at least, grounds in reality of like there is something that is so much bigger than myself at work that just
Yeah, they said I can't even imagine because I mean it's this thing is blowing at 160 right now, and they say it's going to probably weaken, which that's typically what happens.
Well, what it's doing right now, not to interrupt you, Jason, you make a really good point, but it's sucking so much moisture out of our area.
Yeah.
It's also sucking that cool air out. And that cool air is going to start to weaken it a little bit because it's the hot water and the hot air that actually creates these massive storms. And right now it's had none of that. But as it's pulling that cool front that's coming down,
it's going to bring that dry air into it.
It's going to bring that dry air into it. It's going to bring that cooler air into it, and it's going to mess it up a little bit.
Yeah,
but right now it's had perfect conditions to grow.
Yeah.
Until now that it's moving out in the middle and pulling the air, and that's why we don't have a rain chance for 10 days.
I know, it's just unbelievable. It's dry.
And you can look at it as you're watching these satellite pics. You can see it sucking the moisture right away from us.
Wow.
And as it pulls that in, it'll start. And I suspect it'll probably come down a little bit by the time it hits landfall.
I hope. I mean, they didn't think the last storm, Helene, was going to be as strong, but
well, in comparison, our flood in South Louisiana of 2016 dropped around 32 inches of water too. I think they estimated it at just over 7 trillion gallons of water that fell in the South Louisiana area.
Yeah,
That's
it
crazy.
was unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
So,
on a little bit of a lighter note, though, this weekend I had a full weekend full of all sorts of events, and it was, I mean, it really was a really nice, beautiful afternoon, which is, the juxtaposition is kind of ironic, but I was able to perform music out at a festival. I got a little burnt on my forehead, just a little bit of sun. But it was really fun to be able to play music again out with a group that I play with pretty consistently, and it was a great turnout. So it was a fun event out in our local community. They have a big open field. They had a big old stage out on, and it was a nice breeze, and it was a wonderful. I know it was October, but it felt like a nice summer day, to be honest, around here, and it was a lot of fun. So like this whole weekend was, now that we're moving into October, I've got a lot of, I've almost overcommitted myself on a few things, but now everything's coming to fruition after all this practice and scheduling. So it was a lot of fun, though.
Speaking of October, which puts us right around the corner to November.
Yep.
We're getting close to the election time.
Mm-hmm.
What do y'all think about that?
I have a feeling you're trying to segue into what our topic for today is.
Oh, yeah. What is our topic for the day?
Is it about election interference?
Sure.
And or the claims of election interference.
Right.
You know,
Allegedly.
right. I mean,
Well, I can open up with that. I don't know if y'all know this or not, but as of October the 4th, the Republican National Convention has a lawsuit with the Georgia Republican Party and the Fulton County Republican Party against the Fulton County, Georgia election officials
Okay.
for not hiring enough Republican employees to monitor the election. And they're saying that it's kind of funny because this is just so wild how they're looking at this. They only hired 6 out of 62 qualified Republican poll workers to work on election day. That's election day. That's not up to it or anything like that. And that Nadine Williams, the director of the Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections, instead of hiring them herself, she went to temp agencies and managers for individually polling areas. And so that is one of 41 active lawsuits by the Republican National Convention right now.
Well, I do believe the National Party has made it a point to make sure they had over 100,000 poll watchers that they were going to place in strategic areas to just make sure there's none of this, you know, kind of like, oh, we had a water main break and we have to shut everything down. And I mean, I get it that, you know, people will say, you know, during the 2020 election that, you know, all these claims were brought up and all these courts threw them out. But most of these cases were thrown out because it supposedly was stated they had no standing. Mm-hmm. And that's my problem, that really no evidence was listened to. And look, the Democrats played a very good game. They did. And it's very difficult to prove election fraud. It just is. Unless it's just so blatant and wide open that you can kind of latch onto. It's very difficult if you do it subtly, because everybody went to bed that night. Trump had won.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you have these late night ballot drops, and at these ballot drop locations. Of course, all that was tied in with the with COVID and people are afraid to go vote in public and all these things. And is it convenient that a pandemic would hit and that would be the excuse to change some of these election laws that didn't allow this kind of stuff?
Yeah,
all the mail-in ballots.
Exactly, and or the ballot harvesting, and this is what gets me is the Democratic Party is very good at this. They always seem to have a hand, two up on Republicans when it comes to this. I was listening to some stuff online the other day, and it was Republicans were begging the Trump part, the election committee, whoever's running his campaign, to focus on mail-in ballots, because the Democrats are.
Yeah.
And so you got to play the game. Mm-hmm. Don't just. And Trump hates mail-in ballot. Just that whole thing. He's kind of old school.
Yeah.
When it comes to that I believe that there's an early voting period, and then there's the day of the election. And if you can't get yourself out of your house or out of your front of your TV set, and I'm not talking about people who are handicapped. I ain't talking about. I'm talking about just normal, healthy people that just can't seem to get themselves motivated to go to a polling place because I may have to stand in line a little long and pull the lever. That's the kind of people that is generally, I hate to say it, those are the people who generally favor more Republicans. And in this particular case, you've got a lot of mail-in ballots that came in, and they were like 2 to 3 to 1 for, at the time, Joe Biden.
Well, you have to think about this. Joe Biden never left his garage.
He never
and then all of a
campaigned.
sudden, magically, he had more votes than President Obama did.
Well, because I think everyone was turning out, against Trump is what I think it is.
Of course.
It could have been.
I think
it
they
could have
had
been
millions of ballots that they were dumping in at the last minute because up until that time, Trump was ahead. Until 10 minutes before the polls closed, Trump was ahead.
Well,
and then magically, all of a sudden, in a matter of 4 hours, it flips by 7 or 8 million.
Right.
Yeah. No one turned in on that.
Right.
That was all mail-in ballots that magically got stuffed into the stuff. And then magically, oh no, the Dominion things, they're not connected to the internet. And they proved that they were connected to the voting machines were connected
I was listening to a podcast, the PPT podcast. He had a guy on and he was talking about could election machines be hacked into.
Yeah.
And he actually was in the back room when all this stuff was happening. And he said, now, if I remember the conversation right, and I'll pull it up and give the exacts, but he said they couldn't find any evidence of voter manipulation when it came to that. But he did say the machines can be hacked. If you are connected to the internet, you can be hacked.
That's right.
Whether it's through Bluetooth or some other mechanism, it can be hacked. So while they could not show any proof that it got tampered with, the claims that it's 100% safe is not true either.
Right.
So I think you probably need to go back. Look, and I was one to sit here and tell you that while all these machines can be hooked up and you press a button and all things, I had no idea that you never would have thought years ago that I thought that it would have this fear of people manipulating electronically. I'm a firm believer that people just need to show up with your ID.
Oh, yeah.
Prove who you are and cast a vote and go home.
That's it.
That, to me, is the safest. That way my vote, you can say, yep, that person's who he says he is. Now, if you go through some elaborate scheme to kind of falsify who you are and you can get away with it, well, if you want to put that much energy into it, you're going to do what you're going to do. But I think for for most people and for most systems, showing up with an ID, whether it's a driver's license, whether it's some form of other identification to prove who you are, this is who I am. And you pull the lever and you go vote and you're done and you end the day. And it just blows my mind that there are people that absolutely are against the idea of voter ID. To me, there is no other reason other than it makes it easier to cheat.
Right.
I mean, this logic would tell you that.
Exactly.
Okay. And just,
we've talked about this on some other episodes about if pushing back on certain things, pushing back on certain rules or regulations, because obviously if you're doing something wrong, you don't want that. But if you're a good upstanding citizen, why does it matter? You know what I mean? Like that whole mentality of it all.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm abiding by the law. I've got my driver's license. I know where I'm registered to vote, and I want to go out there and do my part. But like you're saying before, if someone's gone through all this effort of falsifying their identification, of course they'd be like, I'm not.
Well, I mean, they have now, it's come out that they have now found, foreign nationals with vote. They've been registered to vote. It's out there. And the idea that say that's not happening is they don't know what they're talking about.
Well, the Secretary of State for Arizona went to vote. And she goes to the polling place to cast her vote, and she was told she had already voted. And so I think that's one of the things that prompted Governor Abbott of Texas to kind of start this thing where they removed over 1 million.
That's right.
Ineligible voters, their registrations. 6,500 of them were non-citizens. Think about that. That means that 6,500 non-citizens registered to vote. 6,000 of them were voters who have felony convictions. 457,000 were dead, and that's actually the Democrats' party's favorite bag to grab names out of. 463,000 were on the suspense list. 134,000 were voters who responded to an address confirmation notice that they had moved. 65,000 were voters who failed to respond to a notice of examination, and 19,000 were voters who requested to cancel their registration, for just over 1 million. And Texas is not the only state doing this now.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you have to. I mean, if you can't trust the system, then I don't know how far we can.
Well, you can't trust the system.
If we can, but I'm looking at an article here by the Brookings, by Brookings, and it says here, a poll by the Associated Press showed that 22% of Republicans and 71% of Democrats have high confidence in votes being counted accurately in 2024. 22% of Republicans.
Mm.
That's a lot of Republicans who don't believe their votes
Yeah.
are going to be counted. And there's a 71% of Democrats. So there's 30% almost there of Democrats don't feel like their votes are going to be counted accurately.
Well, if Harris wins, then they're going to believe their votes were counted. If Harris doesn't win, then they're going to believe their votes wasn't counted.
Well, I'm looking at here. It says in a more recent Washington Post poll found that among New Hampshire Republicans, over 50% believe Biden's win was fraudulent, including 85% of Trump supporters. So that's a lot of Republicans, and it's in a state that's typically votes Democrat.
Oh, yeah.
You know? But as I said, a lot of these states, I mean, you look at these states, and in the 2020 election, some of these elections were very marginal wins that end up putting the edge over for the Democratic candidate. So it wasn't like this landslide or type victory. You know, you have to kind of look at that and go, 2 or 3 percentage points, put that state in the other column.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's it says now here, the Heritage Foundation, and we all know what the Heritage Foundation, it's a conservative think tank. It said election fraud covers a range of activities, such as registering someone to vote and forging their said signature, filling out an absentee ballot for someone who has died or moved away, voting while ineligible, or pretending to be someone else at the polling place and voting. They find that there have been 1,465 proven cases of election fraud. 1,264 of these resulted in criminal prosecutions, and the remainder resulted in civil prosecutions, diversion programs, judicial findings, or other official findings. That Heritage found 103 cases of confirmed election fraud. However, those 103 range from 2005 to 2022, during which time over 107 million ballots were cast. There were 11 million ballots cast in the 2020 presidential election alone. The fraud in Texas amounted to 0.000096% of all ballots cast. So, but see, once again, it's hard to prove election fraud.
Right.
It really is. And there's a lot of tricks that you can play to make it very plausible. And as I said, if you cloak it in the fear of the pandemic, you could see how it would be easy to pre-print ballots, stuff them in boxes after late at night. And if you remember the program, was it the show that came out? Was it 10,000 Mules?
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
Yep.
That showed how that was done.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot of people that they supposedly debunked it, but the technology and how it was done. I mean, they got video surveillance of people just showing up, just one person in the car, pulling out a garbage bag full of ballots and stuffing it in the box.
It's called ballot.
I mean, what
Yeah,
the world's
That's
going
called
on here?
ballot harvesting is what that's called, because they're just growing ballots, and they're just walking in. They had one person had 5,000 ballots on them. Oh, I mean, that's illegal, you know.
Yeah, it is, but the problem is, once again, how do you prove that? And that's what's so hard. And so the detractors of the Trump campaign that don't like him and don't like, they'll point out that all these cases were thrown out. Well, yeah, they were.
Right.
No doubt. You're right. They were thrown out. But you can't help but think in the back of your mind there was a lot of shenanigans going on with this election.
Oh, yeah.
And how some of this stuff went down. Whether that changed the election outcome, we'll never know.
Right.
We will never know. We will sit here and speculate. I do have a problem, though, with a candidate that never really got out and campaigned.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time ever. Never really got out and campaigned. Stayed in a basement. That somehow won.
Magically after the
Magically
polls
won
closed.
that. I and that's what I'm saying. After the poll, to me, if you are the winner, once the polls close at 8:00 or whatever it is, by midnight.
You have to think about this.
By midnight, that should be done.
It shouldn't even be midnight. Okay, it shouldn't even be midnight. Polls close at 8. By 9 or 10, you should be done. Okay, because the mail-in ballots were originally designed for military personnel and people who were stationed outside of America to be able to continue to vote. And they've taken advantage of that. So if you got 1 million people that are stationed, even your civilians and people like that outside of the country, you shouldn't have that many mail-in ballots. You shouldn't be able to magically produce 8 million ballots after the polls closed. That's not its designed intent. Somebody took advantage of that situation and printed it. What do you think they're so mad about with Joe Biden dropping out of the race so close to the election? They're all pissed off. All the ballots they had printed off with his name on it, they can't use now, and somehow they got to get Kamala's names on it. Because that's what they're trying to figure out now. That's what they're freaking out, is they can't print enough of them to ballot harvest.
Well, I think I worry about some of these states have not made changes in their states to fix some of these problems. That's where the issue comes in, because I mean, look, the fact of the matter, this presidential election is going to come down to a few states.
Mm-hmm.
It just will.
Well, right now, Alabama, Louisiana, Ohio, and Virginia are the top 4 states that are passing laws to try to combat this. The Virginia governor said this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an American and a Virginian issue. Every legal vote deserves to be counted without being watered down by illegal votes or inaccurate machines. In Virginia, we don't play games, and our model for election security is working. Well, somebody's trying. And he had an executive order. 6,300 non-citizens were removed from the voter rolls.
Yeah. I hope that these things can get fixed. Now, I do believe it will be different this time around, simply because you don't have a pandemic now to justify why people would be afraid of going to the polls. And that was a convenient cover.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as I said, fear makes people do a lot of things that they probably wouldn't think about doing. And they no longer have that excuse, well, you can go vote early or you can vote the day of. And the only people that should be getting mail-in ballots are people who are requesting a mail-in ballot by the individual, not someone on their behalf.
Right.
Well, other countries don't allow mail-in ballots for the various reasons because
it's not secure.
It's not secure.
There's no way to verify anything.
If you can't go, then you shouldn't be voting.
That's right. You just missed the election. You know, I would be very hesitant of going into nursing homes and trying to get people who's probably their mental state is not quite where it needs to be, how that can be easily manipulated. I just think at a certain point, you know.
Now then you're starting to get into like a gray area for me, because I agree to an extent, but then I'm getting nervous that like who makes that call then.
See, I agree with you on that.
You're not eligible to vote anymore because of XYZ. It's like I understand maybe if you have like doctor's orders or something like that, but then like who's to say that like just because you're in a nursing home you can't vote anymore whenever you have someone that maybe is coherent.
Every nursing home has a couple of vans transport the people that want to go vote to go vote.
But I'm talking about people that have with compromised mental states.
You're right.
Where you have other people coming in. Now, if the family wants to come in and can somehow reach that person, okay, and say, Grandma, Grandpa, who do you want to vote for? We'll fill out the ballot for you, and they sign it or whatever, or they do it. But the idea of just people coming into a nursing home and getting people to vote, I don't know about that. I'm a bit nervous about people taking advantage of people that are not mentally 100%. I mean, they're just not. Now, people that have sound mind, by all means, get them on a bus, bring them to the voting poll and let them vote. I agree with that totally. But I mean, we've all been in nursing homes, and not everybody is just whippersnapper, get up and go. I mean, that's a whole different ball game there, and I think that's where the ballot harvesting is. You can kind of run afoul of that. That's why I think it needs to be very situational in that case. But, that's just me. I mean, I think you should be informed and know what you're voting for and have some degree of what's going on.
Yeah.
If you don't, then, what?
Yeah.
I mean, then someone's just voting for you.
Yeah.
I don't know how. As much as I would say I had a grandparent in a nursing home, and I don't know how they feel about a particular candidate.
Right.
I really don't.
The thing is, like I said before, is like it's kind of a gray area because I do agree with you that like I mean, at a certain point, I don't know. It feels hard to answer that question because it feels like, yes, I feel like there are some people that when they get to that level of coherentness that obviously I don't think they should probably be making decisions like that. But at the same time, like I feel like you're also taking away certain freedoms from people, which is not.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, in a way.
I'm not saying I have the answer.
In a way, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's how you try to go about doing this because, I mean, you have to find the best way you can to accomplish what the system is meant, how it's meant to work. So I mean, I think you need to find some other way. That's what I'm saying. It would have to be the parent or the guardian, whoever's responsible for that person at the nursing home.
Right.
Now, there are a lot of people in nursing homes that have family are not coming to see them.
Oh, right. Yeah.
At all. They just dump them there and that's it. They're just done. I don't know what you do in that case. I really don't.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot that went on that, some things are different now. What's happened in the big tech world?
Oh
You
yeah.
got Elon Musk bought Twitter. Twitter, through these digital platforms, Facebook, all this stuff has come out about the suppression that they did.
Oh yeah.
They altered their algorithms to basically promote the Democratic points and repress Republican points. So, how free are we? And if you're not getting the correct information, I'm going to be honest, looking for information online regarding election interference, every article is pretty much tilted in a Democratic way.
Yes.
It just is.
You notice that too, right?
It is all anti-Trump or any claim he's made. Like somehow he doesn't, like there's no truth to anything he said. That's where I think is where things have kind of, it's just not skewed right now.
Right.
And so I'm glad that Musk, because I'm going to tell you, guess what? It's a lot of stuff is coming out now because he's allowing whatever to be posted on there. People are like, well, if he would not have bought Twitter, you think a lot of this stuff would
Nope.
be coming out? It wouldn't be.
Nope.
It wouldn't be, and it shouldn't be that way. There shouldn't be some group that owns Twitter or Facebook that basically determines what they think the truth is. We ran into that problem with COVID.
Well, the Biden administration was having meetings with the social media giants to, subdue the information.
And can't tell me the intelligence agencies are not approaching. That's what
I'm talking about.
What's his name? Who owns Facebook?
Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, he pretty much testified to Congress that he was pressured.
He wasn't pressured. He was making his money and given free reign to do whatever he wanted.
So it's now I find it funny that all of them are kind of squirming now because they might face, if Trump gets elected, what that might mean for them. Because I'm tell you what, they could commandeer these companies and declare them a public utility. They could do that.
Yep.
And basically say, okay, you have to be, if you're going to give one side this, you got to give the other side this, just like the way public radio is or any other sort of electronic medium that is governed by those kind of platforms. So, we are, it'll be very different this time. I think the amount of migrants that have been coming across the border and them just basically allowing it, this is their way, I'd say it, of cheating. This is the only way they can do it because I don't have the pandemic anymore. I can't rely on mail-in balloting. So we got to bring in all these illegals, get them registered to vote, and that's where we'll make up our numbers.
Well, I had one of our listeners ask me one time, what was the Ukraine and what was the illegal immigrant thing? And I said, well, that's very simple. Ukraine is money laundering for the Biden-Cram family and more the military-industrial complex. But illegal immigration is buying votes. I mean, when San Francisco hires as the voting register, whatever the title is, an illegal immigrant, first off, it's illegal to hire illegal immigrants. It's actually against the law to do it.
Right.
But then they put this as the person responsible for voter registrations. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I'm looking at this report. This is a bit dated, December 7th of 2020. And the website is called Freedom House. And it's a report, digital election interference widespread in countries across the democratic spectrum. They said Election Watch for the Digital Age examined 40 elections and referendums held between June of 2018 in May of 2020 and found that 88% of these contests were marred by digital election interference. Political incumbents spread false rumors about opposition candidates. Authorities shut down the internet, and police arrested individuals for speaking out on social media. As a result, voters in 32 countries were inhibited in their ability to access objective information about candidates and meaningfully participate in the political process. So, is that Freedom House documented such incidents in countries across the democratic spectrum, from Azerbaijan to Australia. Voters in the United States who have already experienced a manipulated information environment during the 2018 elections are facing another round of digital election interference as outgoing President Donald Trump uses, once again, as Donald Trump uses social media to spread false claims of victory and stoke rising intimidation against state politicians and even low-level election workers. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Researching stuff for this, it is hard to find what I call a balanced approach to the subject, because a lot of this, the algorithms basically favor an anti-Trump perspective. They just do.
Right.
I mean, I hate to say it, but it just does. You have to probably go to X to find to really find information. Interesting. 75% of Americans say it's likely that Russia or other governments will try to influence. This was the 2020 election.
Yeah.
So, what they want, they just want a weak America. And I hate to say it, whether, Putin will come out and say, I want Kamala Harris or I want Trump or whatever. And I read something that right now Iran is definitely is manipulating social media and having some efforts to obviously kill President Trump.
Really?
Oh, yeah. China seems to be more aimed at focusing more on state-level races and Senate races that would be for candidates that would more align with their political agenda. Really? And Russia seems to want do things, according to what they're saying, to do things to help President Trump get elected. So, you got China doing one thing, Iran doing another thing, You got Russia doing another thing. Whether any of this stuff actually plays out, we'll see. But I am encouraged that at least because of the awareness of what went on in the 2020 election, there's going to be a lot more eyes peeled on these kind of shenanigans, and we'll call them out. Right. So I'm encouraged at least that issue is kind of at the forefront. And so there's a lot of energy being directed toward making sure we do things the right way.
Right.
That I'm going to watch you count the ballots. There's going to be no closing the doors. Oh, we'll take care of it, and you need to get out of here. No, you're going to count the ballots. I'm going to watch you.
Yeah.
Once you're done, we seal them, and we're finished.
Right.
And we'll deliver them to, we'll report the results to the Secretary of State of that given state. That's what you do.
Right.
None of this other stuff that was going on. We'll just trust us. We'll handle it. Yeah, right.
No.
Okay, whatever.
I'm just nervous that we're going to have another one of those moments where, like, a state's going to shut down and not turn the votes in or whatever. Like, what was it, Nevada during the 2020 election? And, like, they didn't turn their votes in for, like, a whole week or something like that.
That's what I'm saying. That's the shen. Snowy was talking about by 9 or 10 o'clock. I'm willing to give it to midnight.
Right.
Just simply because of
the
nature of the beat. But by midnight, by law.
Right.
Because now you're going into another day.
Yeah.
the election day would end at midnight.
Right.
So you should have everything tallied.
Yep.
Anything received after midnight doesn't count.
Yep.
You have to get everything counted, done, and be honest with you, after 8 o'clock, you shouldn't even receive anything outside of 8 o'clock other than maybe ballots that are coming in from overseas from military personnel or whatever, because I don't know what the process for that is. But
especially if you have like a early voting window and then you have election day being the cutoff, like there's enough time.
Yes.
You can figure it out.
Yes. I don't know what you're having to do. I mean, I really don't. I mean, it just blows my mind that it takes that long. The longer you allow that stuff to go, it's just inevitable. That's just going to just be rife for corruption to take place. It just does.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
man.
it's hard. It's hard. It's hard finding.
It's getting worse now. Okay, it's getting worse. The Michigan governor just signed into law that it stops recounts for fraud allegations and widespread margin victories. Okay, so if you believe there was fraud, you can't even say that now in Michigan.
See that?
Why would she sign that?
That's what worries me about some of these states. Did they fundamentally change the way they do elections in that state?
But you got to think about that too. Okay, if I win by 3%, there could be a recount. So let's just make sure I win by 15% with enough ballot harvesting to where now there's no need to do it. So now they're just going to make sure that they get enough votes that they need.
Right.
Well, to me, what's going to happen is basically the Supreme Court's going to have to make a ruling that voter ID is a minimum requirement for every vote to be counted. I just don't know how you can just not get away, not support that. I don't, because I want to know that the system is tabulating the votes in the correct way. I just do. And whether my candidate wins or not, look, there's plenty of candidates I voted for that have not won.
Right.
There's plenty of candidates I voted for have won. So it just depends on, just the shifting winds of politics.
Right.
And
this has also been a problem for, I think, as long as the country has been probably... As long as the country has been here, there has been probably some level of voter fraud going on. It's just now, it's just a modern equivalent of it all. There's technology involved. There's now mail-in ballots. It's so messy that it's like, we're in a modern age. It's scary.
Well, yeah, I was talking about Russia, Iran, and China, where I got some of this information. It's a CBS News article. Top Justice Department official warns of onslaught of foreign election interference from Russia, Iran, and China. Just 33 days ahead of the election, top Justice Department officials warning of an onslaught of foreign election interference from Russia, Iran, and China. Matthew Olson, head of the Department of National Security Division, said in an interview with CBS News that the U.S. is facing a multi-pronged offensive from three nations. Among the lines of attack is a barrage of propaganda from Russia to sow division in a highly polarized U.S. electorate, persistent cyber intrusions into campaigns of both former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris, and a grave Iranian assassination plot targeting Trump. They see this as a period of vulnerability for us, Olson told CBS Evening News anchor and managing editor Nora O'Donnell. They are looking at ways at which they can change the outcome of our election, or to find issues that divide us in ways that support their national interests at the expense of ours. He says in Russia, he says malicious actors are leveraging artificial intelligence to manufacture content, such as fake videos of the vice president meant to spread disinformation. Moreover, he said, Moscow has upped its game in another way, laundering Kremlin talking points through U.S.-based social media influencers who have large online followings. Olson described a brazen effort by Russia to help Trump win the election. What we're seeing with Russia's clearly preferred outcome. Russia has been seeking to boost the candidacy of the former president to denigrate the candidacy of the vice president. And then he goes on to say, I'm trying to look here when they get into the other countries. And he goes, as for China, while the volume activity is less than that coming out of Iran and Russia, their interest in the upcoming election seems more focused on congressional and state office campaigns, where they aim to find candidates who may fall more in line with the interests of China, just like I said earlier, rather than the presidential race.
Wow.
So
here I found this for y'all. France banned mail-in voting in 1975 due to fraud. Mexico banned mail-in voting in 1992 due to fraud. Belgium banned mail-in voting in 2018 due to fraud. Sweden does not permit mail-in voting. Italy, Ukraine, Russia, Japan, no Middle Eastern countries permit mail-in voting, and no Latin country permits mail-in voting.
Well, as I said, because they know what mail-in voting allows a smart group to be able to manipulate votes. The only way that was able to get through was the pandemic. And that's why it goes back to talk of how this pandemic happened. It came out of Wuhan, China. It was released with the intention of mine of creating an environment where we have to do something to change the paradigm. What is it going to be? Well, let's create an environment where mail-in voting would be palatable, and then we can manipulate the votes that way. Because without that, you can't. Without mail-in voting, Trump is the president of the United States right now. Think about that.
Right.
Without mail-in voting, Trump is the president right now.
Crazy.
Did y'all see this former Colorado County election official?
No.
The one that got sentenced to 9 years?
Oh,
Yes.
I think I did hear about this.
Yeah.
And
What did they get convicted of?
Tina Peters, a Republican, was convicted last August on most counts against her in the election interference case. Peters, 68, helped breach Mesa County's election computer systems and allowed an unauthorized individual to access voting equipment and election records. She carried out the breach amid unsubstantiated claims what mass voter fraud had caused former President Donald Trump to lose the White House in the last presidential election. State District Court Judge Matthew Barrett told Peters on Thursday, "You're no hero.
Oof.
You are a charlatan who used and is still using your prior position in office to peddle a snake oil that's been proven to be junk time and again." He sentenced her to 8.5 years in the Colorado Department of Corrections and additional time in the Mesa County Detention Center.
So she gave somebody access and was able to prove that there was election fraud committed, and then they convict her.
Right.
So what happened to whistleblower laws?
I don't know if what she did, if she did, she broke the law,
Right.
allowing third party.
But she proved it was able to be done.
But at the same time, if the system is rigged, where the only way you can expose the truth is by breaking the law, then where does that put us?
Mm-hmm.
You know, where does that put us? And I don't like where that puts us, but I think in her mind, she felt like what she was doing was right, whether with some judge who's probably some I hate to say it, probably
Well, yeah.
somebody that favors the other side of the political aisle. You know, in her mind, she goes, "Look, I gotta show this because this is a joke.
Right.
The system is not working the way it's supposed to work." You know, not to say that Colorado would have gone red,
Right.
or not. I think I think that state is lost. But
you have to think about it also. You know, now that the Department of Justice is weaponized against the American citizens, she couldn't even call the FBI and say, I need help with this, because guess what? They work for the Biden crime family. So she had no one to call. All she could do was just try to get it out there, get the information out there, and let people see it. And
Well,
she got convicted of
it
it.
said investigators also issued a search warrant for MyPillow founder Mike Lindell.
I heard about that too.
And I don't know if Mike Lindell's where he could show, when he first came out and said, I can show you proof of the voter fraud. I'm wondering if it was tied to this. It might have been. I don't know. But that's it. Once again, it's if the only way for me to prove my case is to break the law, then, where does that put me? As someone that's trying to show that, hey, man, this is screwed up.
Right.
This is not the way our system is meant to work.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, it's I don't know.
Crazy stuff.
It's going to be an interesting month or two ahead of us.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting.
Stock up on toilet paper, and canned goods, and ammo, and everything else.
Jack Smith, he judge unsealed another, new evidence filed in Trump election interference case. I mean, it's just like they cannot let this go.
No, of course not.
Because what's going to happen, I'm going to tell you, if Trump gets elected, he's basically, his Justice Department is going to drop all these cases and it's going to be over with. So they're so desperate to try to convict him where he can't be president. I just, it's unbelievable where this, where we've gone as a country. But here we are.
So, as of the release of this episode,
yes, I think I know where you're going with this.
I don't know. As of the release of this episode, it's going to be 21 days till the election.
Oh, no, that's not.
So I was going to go ahead and give a little call to action.
Yes,
you can go to vote.org and register to vote. I think that's a non-biased place to get all your stuff, or non-partisan, whatever you want to call it, place where you can go ahead and check if you're registered, your eligibility and all that stuff, and register to vote and all that stuff, and figure out where your voting stations are going to be at, because I think I just learned where mine is. So I'm going to be getting prepared. And again, I know there's we talked about some dark stuff. I know sometimes we talk about some dark things like this, but I mean, if you have the ability to go and vote and make your difference,
we're talking dark stuff now. Wait till next week.
Right.
It's going to be more dark. You know.
So what did you think? What did you think I was going with this?
We hit a milestone on our downloads.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't see that. What was it?
Well, check it out.
Okay, let me pull it up.
Since you're giving the stuff here.
Let's see what we got. Stats.
Hit all time.
All time. 15,000?
Over 15,000 downloads now. Now, that's not listens, guys. That is actual downloads.
Yeah, I was talking to someone about how the metrics, how they determine how many people are actually listening to your podcast. And I don't know how they, what counts as a listen.
Right. I
don't think they do listens. I think when you hit the download button, that comes up, because like Apple has 10 or 15 podcast players below them.
Right.
So it's kind of weird. You got anything on this one, Ian?
No, I've never really learned why our distribution site calls it downloads. And I think they do that because I think that you don't have to particularly download the episode, but if you listen to almost the entire portion of it, I think your phone does kind of
That's
save it.
where I'm very curious at what point does the cutoff occur? Is it 50%? Is it 2/3 or whatever?
If you log into the back end of Spotify, I believe there's also metrics that like how many times people have started the episode. I'm not sure. So they go by streams, so it's not downloads, but it's streams for Spotify. So I think it's just a different. I've also heard from people in the industry that the metrics for podcasts are hard to nail down. So I don't think we're the only ones.
Well, y'all keep listening,
keep
downloading,
exactly.
And share us and get us out there. Help get us out there. We got some good stuff coming.
Yep.
Some interesting episodes are ahead of us, and please share us.
Yep.
Tell all your friends about us, your family. Share us.
Yep.
And like us and give us some 5-star stuff too.
Right. We have a Facebook page /Retrospect Pod. You can reach out to us that way. As I've been saying in the past few episodes, we do have comment sections now on a lot of the different platforms that I kind of check up on pretty consistently. So Spotify and YouTube both have comment sections for the videos where you can leave those, like Stoney just said, leave us a like, subscribe to the channels where you can, or wherever you feel like you want to listen to us on. And until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
Hey, thank you for hanging out with us today. You're the best. Peace.